Hello, everyone on Patreon. Thank you so much for voting this month on a Cagney's in the Movies video. The winner this month was a tie, so there was no winner. It was tied between Angels with Dirty Faces and 1, 2, 3. I flipped the coin, and Angels with Dirty Faces is our video choice for the month, which is a great choice. Probably my favorite Cagney performance, as well as many others, I'm sure. This was directed by Michael Curtiz. The screenplay was by John Wexley Warren Duff from a story by Roland Brown. Of course, James Cagney is a star, as well as Pat O'Brien and Humphrey Bogart. The plot, according to IMDb, is a priest tries to stop a gangster from corrupting a group of street kids. Cagney gives a phenomenal performance in this, and of course, the obvious comparison with this is with his performance in Public Enemy. So, how do you play a very similar part, but yet bring such a different approach to it? At the same time, which of course is what he did, but at the same time, it is a very different story. Whereas the Public Enemy is really about why Tyrone Power and his friends go into crime, and it's much more of an inside look into crime. This has a little bit of that with the subplot between him and Humphrey Bogart that Cagney has. But really the heart of it is with him and Pat O'Brien, his boyhood friend, and of course, the Dead End Kids. So you see different sides of him. And of course, he also has this love story with Ann Sheridan, another side to his character. But of course, he added the "what do you hear, what do you say" when that was his idea. I believe that was his idea. Yes, it was. I just looked it up. It says here online, his main inspiration was a drug-addicted pimp who stood on a street corner all day, hitching his trousers, twitching his neck, and repeating, "what do you hear, what do you say?" Those mannerisms came back to haunt Cagney. He later wrote in his autobiography, "I did those gestures maybe 6 times in the picture. That was over 30 years ago, and the Impressionists have been doing doing him ever since." So that was, he modeled it on this pimp that he knew, or that he at least, I don't know how well he knew him, but it was someone he saw in a tough ethnic neighborhood on the Upper East Side, just south of Spanish Harlem. So, of course, that was different compared to Tyrone Power. But you see more of his juvenile side when he's with those kids. I mean, some of the ways in which they interacted remind me of the Three Stooges, stomping on their foot and elbowing the chin and slapping them around a little bit, particularly in the basketball game when they're constantly fouling the other team and he's it would hit them or elbow one guy in the chin as he threw the ball in the air. It's very, very funny. But he brings this. He's like a rascal in this to me. Just the way he would laugh, at things. Like I love the moment when he sees Ann Sheridan again when he needs a flat as he comes out of jail, and he doesn't recognize who she is at first, but again he has got a great expression when he first sees her that you can see in his face that he finds her attractive, and then as he asks for a room, and then they put it together that they've known each other and he picked on her, which we saw at the beginning of the film, and so she slaps him and throws his hat down and says she's been waiting years to do that, something along those lines, and then he just laughs. I mean, he was amused. But I love the humor, just the sense of humor that he naturally has, the comedy which we saw in a lot of Cagney performances, and to bring this into this game. I mean, this of course is the post pre-code, right? So now the production code in 1935 was much, much harsher, and the films became much more censored. So, if you look at Public Enemy, which is rougher and more of an inside look at gangsters, this is more of a criticizing gangsters, much, much more so. I mean, that one was as well, but it was more empathetic, where here it's much more about, how to help juvenile delinquents and young people in rough areas who may be looking up to a guy that like the Cagney character in this. And so it's a very, very different in terms of what it's about, and of course, the gangsters have to pay the price which I always had to. But in this case, that was even stronger after the production code. And it's not an inside look at being a gangster. It is much more about the influence of gangsters on kids and the bad influence and how we have to reform children and give them a better, influence, like very much like Pat O'Brien's character is doing. And so it's very, very different. So obviously you're going to see different sides to him, but they don't necessarily shy away from his roughness. I mean, some of those scenes with Cagney, just, I mean, he's pretty rough. He's pretty threatening. The shootout at the end, the way he is with the other gangsters who were working with Bogart. But Bogart. The subplot is Bogart is trying to screw him out of all this money he owes him as he's coming out of jail. But I like that, but I really love the scenes with Pat O'Brien and Sheridan and the kids. I mean, in the softer side as well, like when he's with Ann Sheridan, again, it's all in his behavior and his expression. He doesn't have to say, "Oh, I'm starting to like you," or this, I want to be with this woman. I mean, you could see it in his expression that he was starting to fall for her, and she started to fall for him to the point where she didn't even want him to go to jail. What Pat O'Brien was gonna, even though they were best friends as kids, and he saw that, yeah, he's having a bad influence on the dead end kids. He was like, I'm gonna go after him, and how she tries to talk him out of it. She was falling for him, right? So that was really really interesting to me. But again, I just love those more tender and softer, boyish sides to him that came out, and the end, of course. I mean, it's one of the greatest endings in Hollywood history in terms of, Pat O'Brien says to him, you gotta start to beg and plead and turn yellow and yeller, as they call it, and that way the kids won't look up to you. They'll say that you went into the electric chair by screaming and begging for your life instead of being really tough and spitting in the cop's eyes, which then they're gonna worship you. They're gonna hero worship you. And I love the ambiguity of that because as we see, he first says he's not gonna do that and that he would never, plead for his life and that he can take this on no problem if they want to electrocute him. He's acting very tough about it and brave, and he doesn't look scared at all. He's even making jokes about it. But I love also the interaction with the cop. The cop is giving him a hard time, and he jumps at the bars, and you really felt that he wanted to strangle that guy. Again, I love, and then he punches him outside when they're about to walk him down to the electric chair. It's such a sad moment at the same time because this is the thing about Cagney. He always, he humanized these characters. He treated them like human beings. It's not that he's trying to make them it's not that he's trying to make you like him. It's just that he's there is something to say about these people outside the law and why these gangster parts have always been attractive to audiences, because I think for me, you're thinking, how do these people do what they do? And there is something admirable about someone who can just not take crap from anybody and confront people if they feel threatened, and not being afraid to throw a punch, not being afraid of violence and stuff. And because I think in life we have some of those impulses, but we know that there's going to be consequences if we follow it. So there's something about the behavior of gangsters that I think people find appealing. Not that I think it's a good thing to go into crime. Obviously, I don't. But I think that is why it has been attractive, just in terms of from a story standpoint, to see these guys. And again, I think it's those qualities that Cagney has, that boyish yet tough, rascal-like nature, fun, charming, threatening. He brings so much to it with just this somewhat light touch at times, but then some brutal touch at others. So he really makes a real three-dimensional part. He's not just one note. I mean, he's several notes. He has several sides to his personality. But of course, at the end, you do see him start to plead and beg. And so did he do that because the priest asked him to do it? Or was he truly afraid? And then we saw him break down. And of course, as Cagney said, people always would ask, hey, what was going on there? Did he break down, or how did you approach it, or was he doing it for the priest so that the kids wouldn't hero worship you? And he says he just played it straight, right? And he just left it to the audience, and that's a smart choice as an actor. I mean, if you see, he's playing it that he's telling the priest that there's no way he's going to do that. That even as they're walking towards the electric chair, the father, Pat O'Brien's character, is saying, "Come on, please," and he's like, "No," and even that that close up where he's grinning a little bit, but he still looks really really tough as he approaches the chair, and then you just see the silhouette of him panicking. So you don't see whether that was a performance or not. He's putting his hand on the rails, and so you don't see his face. Which again, from Michael Curtiz, which is a smart choice because it's making the audience go to it and make up your own mind. And it really changes who he is. I mean, because he says that maybe he was born without a heart, but is that really true? Because if you do see how with Pat O'Brien, he's very devoted to him, and he basically, dies for him. I mean, there was a solution to this from their point of view. Him and Bogart and the gangsters was when Pat O'Brien was going after them was to basically kill him, and he's like, no, you're not going to kill him. So obviously, because he loved him, right? I mean, he even wasn't threatened by the fact that Pat O'Brien was going after him. I mean, he at first said he didn't think anything was going to come of it, and then of course things did come of it, and then they were in trouble. But he doesn't turn on him. He's very understanding. So I think on some kind of subconscious level, even though he is often saying, "Oh, you people are," he tells Pat O'Brien he's a sucker for not taking the. At one point, he was going to give him $10,000 towards the recreation center he's trying to build for the kids, and Pat O'Brien says, "No, I'm not going to take that because, clearly it's blood money." And he's like, "Oh, don't be a sucker." So he says one thing, but what was he really thinking? I mean, it's mysterious. It's really up to the audience. I mean, is he? Maybe there's guilt, about the life he went down, or maybe it was just something he did out of necessity, not necessarily because he's truly evil. I mean, obviously there's something in him that's evil because he can kill people, but at the same time, he's there's a humanity to him. There is a sense of what I'm doing is wrong. And a love for of other people like Ann Sheridan and his affection for these kids was growing, and of course for the Pat O'Brien character. So it's really up to you what his choices were at the end, right before they kill him in the electric chair. But it's such a gut wrenching moment, whether he's doing it because he's scared or not. Just hearing him pleading, and as he said, he played it straight, right? So that the audience, he didn't just perform it because the character may have been faking it. He plays it very straight, and you feel it. I mean, by the time the screams end, I'm relieved just because I don't want to hear those screams anymore. It's scary. It's beautifully done, beautifully performed. But what an ending! I love even when they're about to grab him and to walk him down the hallway, and he pushes the cops off, and he goes, "Come on, let's just do this." He's like, "You don't need to hold me." In other words, where am I going to go? I'm not going to run. There's nowhere to run to. This is the end of my life, and let's go. I just love that he just kind of took control there in that moment, and it's not going to take crap from anybody. So yeah, it's so good, and it's probably my favorite film that he's in, one of my favorites anyways, and it's just such a Rocky Sullivan. I mean, what a fantastic performance, and everything that he brought to it, from using a real life person to model to the behavior, from the ruthless gangster to the softer touch to the humorous side to the Three Stooges banter we're seeing with those kids. It's a wonderful three-dimensional human being. I mean, he creates a human, living, breathing person right in front of you, and I think that's why here we are 85 years later, and this is still so memorable, so fresh, feels so modern, and it's fantastic. So thank you so much for voting this month on this video. I hope that you've enjoyed this episode. Please comment below. Let me know what you think of Jimmy Cagney in Angels with Dirty Faces. Thank you again, everyone, and I will see you in the next one.